Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
What's up, guys? Here we have a 2006 Subaru WRX that we noticed on the right rear wheel. It chewed the tire up, kind of funny, so we're gonna jack up the vehicle and take a look and figure out what went wrong. I'm gonna loosen up the lug nuts. I'm gonna use a 19mm socket and a breaker bar. Now we'll raise and support the vehicle. So we were looking, before I take this tire off, we were looking under here and we noticed this spring was loose. And what happened was this bottom part of the strut assembly has rotted out. You can see it's all rotted. This should be higher up, and this was what was rubbing on the tire and caused our tire to blow out. So now we're gonna pull the tire off. We'll use a 19mm socket, a ratchet. Pull the tire up. We're going to take this caliper bracket hose off. We want to loosen this up. We're going to use some rust penetrant because it's really rusty. There's a retainer on there that holds that in. So let that soak for a little while. I'm going to use a punch and a hammer. I'm going to try to punch it from underneath. Underneath here. Tap it up, try to get that clip out, just like that. Pull this clip out of the way. Now I can grab the brake hose and slide it out of the way. I'm going to use a little rust penetrant on these nuts for the lower part of the strut. Just soak those because they're really rusty. Let that sit for a little bit. Now that the bolt's a little bit loose, I'm going to use a ratchet. Just going to get it so it's finger tight. Then I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm going to break this one free the same as the other one with the long breaker bar. Now I'll switch to the ratchet. And that's pretty loose now, so I'm just going to leave the nut on there. And we're going to go remove the nuts from the top. We're going to remove the back seat. There's a little plug that covers a bolt. I'm going to take a flat blade screwdriver, pull the cover off. You're going to do that on both sides. I'm going to remove this 12mm bolt with a 12mm socket and a ratchet. Oops. Loosen this one out and take the other one out as well. Now we're going to lift the front of the seat. I'll pull this right out. Next we're going to take these 12mm bolts out. There's one here. There should be one right here. Our vehicle doesn't have one. There's another one right there. And there's also one right there. Use a 12mm socket, an extension, and a ratchet. Next, before we lift up on the back part of the seat, you need to open this and pull this out, and then you're able to lift up on the seat. Get the seat belts out of the way. And pull the back part of the seat right out. Next, we're going to pull these upper strut mount nuts off. I'm going to start with this one back here underneath the seat belt. I'm going to use a 12mm ratchet wrench. That's the hardest one to get to first, so do that one first and then take the other two out. Now we'll use a 12mm socket and an extension and a ratchet. Take these other two out. Take that last nut off. Next, I'm going to take these nuts off that we loosened up earlier. Take those out. I'm going to use a punch to hammer the bolts out. Pull that one out. Try to hammer the other one out as well. Once it's loose, I can grab it by hand, pull it out. This is actually pretty loose. Otherwise, if it's stuck on there, you use a pry bar. So pull the strut down. Pull it straight out. When I go to take this nut off, I'm going to use a 17mm socket. Under normal circumstances, you would need to use these spring compressors or have an ability to compress this spring. But since this is loosened up, we don't have to do that. But keep in mind, you really want to do that. Otherwise, the spring will go flying. And we're not reusing this strut, so I'm going to use a pair of locking pliers right here. This will keep the top part of the strut from spinning. If we were reusing this strut, you wouldn't want to do this. We're going to use an impact gun. Take that nut right off. You can pull the mount off. Pull the spring right off. Pull this off because we're going to transfer it to the new strut. So here's the new strut. There is a holder right here that's holding tension on the strut. I'm just going to push it down. Take this off, take the nut off. You're going to want to transfer this rubber piece to the new one. Just pull up, there's some retainers that hold it in. If you can get a new one, then you can use a new one, but we're just going to reuse our old one. I'm going to line this up. This goes right here. Pull these little ears through. It's lined up good. Where's that? This little stopper is going to go on there. All right, so we know the bolts go out towards the wheel on this side. We're gonna look at the top of the strut mount. It says four-wheel drive out. So that's gonna go towards the outside. So we want that facing the same direction of the strut. Place that on there, like that. And there's not a lot of tension on this spring, so we can put the bolt right on. Get that started. Now I'm going to tighten this nut down. I'm going to use a 19mm socket and a ratchet. Oops. The strut's spinning a little bit. So what I can do is I can loosen up this piece right here, this dust shield that goes over there. I can install my locking pliers up high, because then it won't hit the seal of the strut. And then I can tighten this down without the center of the strut spinning. There is a special tool you can use that it will hold that nut, and then you can use like an Allen socket, but we don't have that tool. So we're just going to do it this way. Once that's good, we're going to torque it to 44 foot-pounds. Good. I'm going to reinstall this rubber shield. Just slide it up. Once it's up, then you're going to twist it. It'll lock in place. Now we can reinstall this in the car. Now we're going to reinstall the strut. I'm going to slide it up here. I'm going to line up the holes up top. And get it lined up over here. Take one of the bolts. Might have to work this back and forth a little bit. Get that started. Once I get that bolt on from down below, I can install a nut up top so that the mount does not come out of the holes. Just get that started. Now that we got that one started, just take a little hammer, tap it in, and we're going to push on the rotor. Try to get the other one in. Then tap that one on as well. We can take our nuts and reinstall those. Install this nut down below. Now I'll tighten these bolts up and use a wrench to hold the nut, a 19mm wrench, 19mm socket, and a ratchet. Now we're going to torque these with a torque wrench, and I'm going to torque them to 145 foot-pounds. For the top one, I'm going to use the same 19mm wrench, and we'll tighten this one down to 145 foot-pounds. Because my wrench is stuck up against the wall of the vehicle, I'm going to use a pry bar and just pry it off. And reinstall the brake hose, get that lined up, then we'll reinstall this clip. Just slides on. You can take a little hammer, tap it on. Just like that. I'm going to install the other nuts up top. Get that started. Get the one started underneath the seatbelt. I'll take my 12mm socket and ratchet, and we'll tighten them down. All right, so once we get those snug, we'll take that off. The torque spec for these is 14 foot-pounds. So we're gonna get a torque wrench in there and snug those up. It's gonna be kind of hard to get the one underneath the seatbelt, so do the best you can. That's good. Now we'll install the rear seat back. Slide this in over here. We're gonna remember to get this seatbelt, wrap it around. Slide this in place. Make sure to pull the side seatbelts out as well. Pull that one out like that. With all the seatbelts in place, we're going to lift up and then push back the top part of the seat and then push down. This is a little bit tricky. You might have to do this a couple times. You can grab the top of the seat. As you can see, this one's not clipped in. So we'll lift that up, push back. You can kind of see from the outside, if you look through the window, you can kind of see where the seat needs to go. Push it, lock it in. Once we know that's all secure up top, we can close this. That'll lock in place. And we can reinstall the bolts that go in there. Make sure you pull the seatbelt away from that one. One goes there. One goes right here. There should be one that goes there, but this vehicle doesn't have that one. And one goes right here. Once you get those all started, we can take our 12mm socket, our extension, and a ratchet. Now we'll snug those up. Snug that one up, and same with the other one. Next we'll install the lower part of the seat. We're going to pull up on the seatbelt buckle sides. Slide this in. Slide that underneath. Make sure it's in there good. We can install the bolts on the front side. Get that lined up. We'll get this one started before we snug it down. And we'll do the other one. Now we can snug these down. A 12mm socket, extension and a ratchet. We'll do the same for the other one. We'll reinstall this cover over the bolt. Do the same for the other side. So because we don't have a new tire at this point, we're gonna reinstall the donut spare tire. This guy will have to drive to a tire store and get a new tire. All right, now reinstall the donut spare. Install the lug nuts. Some of these lug nuts are a little tighter to go on, so I'll use a socket and a ratchet, 19mm socket. All right. I'm going to use a 19mm socket and a torque wrench. I'm going to torque these lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. I'm going to do this in a star pattern. The reason I do it in a star pattern, it'll tighten the wheel down evenly. One thing you're going to want to keep in mind whenever you're replacing a strut, you're going to want to do them in pairs, that way both sides are matching. Also, when doing any kind of suspension work, you're going to want to go to a local garage that does alignments and have them at least have the alignment checked, if not done. That way it'll prolong the life of your tires.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.